Hey guys, welcome to another episode. So on today's episode, we're going to be sanding this whole quarter panel. I've already done the other side, as you saw in the last one. Got that all the way down to bare metal. I shot some primer on it just to kind of test out the new compressor and the new paint gun that I got. Shoots really well, so I'm pretty happy. I feel confident moving on. We're going to get probably up to about here, maybe to this rust hole. We're just going to strip this whole side, and what I use for that is just my high-speed polisher with a 7-inch pad, and then I'll use like some 80 grit. I'll sand the whole thing down with 80 grit, and then I'll come back around and do it again with 120. 120 is pretty good for priming, but I might go a little bit higher than that, maybe like a 240, and then shoot my primer. But we'll do the whole quarter panel in this episode. Door jams maybe in another episode, I'm not sure. But yeah, let's get this one done, and then you guys can kind of see the process of how I strip all this. The roof still needs to get stripped, and then to do the roof and the pillars, I need to actually pull the windshield out. So I don't know if I'm going to do that myself. I have the tool to do it. I just don't want to break it and then have to pay for another one. So I think I'd rather have somebody come out and do it. But let's get started on this. You guys can follow along. Down to 80 grit. There's still some little primer left on there, but whenever we hit it with the 120, that should take the rest of that off. I didn't find anything that I was too concerned about. Really, up here is the only concern. I think this quarter panel might have been replaced at one point too, because that to me looks like a stitch weld putting this panel back on. So that would mean that both quarter panels have been replaced, so that's awesome, but I don't see any other evidence of it. So I don't know if maybe it's just a dent that somebody changed or what. But yeah, next we're gonna do the 180 grit. In the later part of that time lapse, you could see I was using a little angle grinder here, and what this is, it's just an angle grinder with a hook and loop pad. I can put 80 grit on here just to get into these tighter areas that 7-inch pad doesn't really want to fit in. But you see we went up to about here. This is about all I want to do for right now. I don't want to leave the whole car kind of bare metal and then have it flash rust, and then I gotta resand it anyway. So, but all of this is looking pretty terrible. I think we're gonna continue on with the plan though of just putting these together and welding them back together, the inner and outer skins, sealing them, and then putting the wide body over fenders on, and then connecting the fender to the wide body, the flare, and then sealing all that stuff up. That way it looks more OEM, it's actually watertight, and then I'll rivet the body kit onto the quarter panel and then fiberglass mold it in, so that way it's like a seamless transition. You're not going to be able to tell that there's a fiberglass fender on top of that unless you touch it. But yeah, I didn't run into a lot more rust than I thought was going to be there. There's some down here that I wasn't expecting, some down there, and then just up here where the hardtop panel meets the quarter panel, there's a little bit up there, but nothing too bad. I think it's still in okay shape. The quarter glass window, usually what I'll do for these is I'll take a wire wheel and I'll just wire wheel out the whole area just to get all the sealant and everything that's stuck up in there, take all that stuff off. I can already see a rust hole right there, so that's gonna be good. There's another rust hole right here, and I think up in here, there's probably another one. It looks like a little bit of surface rust, but this whole channel is rusted out. So we're gonna cut this. I might do that this episode if I get some time. I might just cut out this panel, and usually what I'll do to replace those is I'll take a piece of cardboard and cut the cardboard out, lay it on top of that, and make my design that way. Hopefully it's not too dusty in here and you can actually see me on the video. But that variable speed polisher that it goes real high speed, and then you can put the sandpaper on that. That's a trick that I actually learned watching Motion Auto TV. I saw him do it on his Supra, and he did the same thing time lapse, and it makes it look a lot faster than it really is. My hands are pretty sore. That took quite a while, but it came off pretty easy. It's a lot easier than using like a palm sander with 40 grit or an 80 grit and just sitting here chipping away at it layer after layer. This thing just slides us all right off. So, all right, let's get started on the 120 grit, and I don't think I'm gonna prime it tonight. It's not really humid here right now, so it should be okay just to leave for a few days. And what I'm planning on doing over the next maybe month is just like an hour or two a night, do some body work, and go in, study for the classes that I've got, and just keep doing it that way until my test gets closer, and then I can focus a little bit more time. But I want to get this all done so I can clean out the garage, because this just makes dust everywhere. The floor is just coated in dust, and I don't want to get dust everywhere. So, all right, well, let's get started on the 120 grit. Put my mask on before I dive. That's another thing, is safety. You saw me wearing the glasses. I noticed that whenever I was in here in the rust spot, one of the pieces actually came up and hit me right in the glass, like in the lens. So it's a good thing I was wearing those safety glasses. I probably would have taken my eye out, but always wear a dust mask and always have your safety glasses on when you're doing like this high speed of grinding and sanding. But yep, let's get to it. So that's 120. The whole car, pretty much just this quarter panel, is sanded down to 120. I don't think I'm going to go up to the 220 like I was thinking, because this is pretty smooth as it is now. And the reason I'm doing the sanding from the 80 grit to the 120 and all that other stuff is because when you sand with 80 grit, you're leaving these real deep scratches, these really, really big scratches. And when you come back over it with 120, you're taking those big scratches and turning them into smaller scratches. And the reason you want to do that is because when you spray the primer, it's going to sink into all these scratches. And the 120 is going to leave a smoother finish than if you just primed over 80 grit. You'll still be able to see all those big, deep scratches. But what I mean by grit, I've got a little piece here. This is 80 grit. You can see I tore it up pretty bad. But 80 grit would be 80 grains of sand in 1 square inch. So you got all the way from, I think, 32, maybe even lower, 32 grit, all the way up to 3,000 grit. They might even have more now, I don't know. But yeah, so you're talking 5,000 grains of sand per square inch. And this is more aggressive, so it's got 80 grits, or 80 grains of sand per square inch. But the reason for leaving some of this, the reason I'm not going all the way up to 3,000 the way it is because you want to leave some scratches for that primer to lock into. The primer is going to use what's called a mechanical adhesion. It's not, some of them use like a small bit of chemical adhesion, I think. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge body guy, but the mechanical adhesion is when you've got the grooves and the primer is actually going to sink into it and they're going to lock together. And that's what's holding your primer in, is you've got the grooves and the primer's locking in. That's the mechanical adhesion part. A chemical adhesion would be like if I sprayed a paint and it interacts with another coating and then they kind of bond together. But we're not going to be doing that here. And so you want to leave some grooves for that primer to sink into. If you don't have, like if it's too smooth, the primer's just not going to stick. What I like to do is I'll put the primer on probably at 120. And I'm okay with that because it's good enough to bite into. What I see a lot of people do is when they do it with the primer, they'll sand all the way up to 400 grit. They'll block sand everything, get it up to 400 grit, and then they'll shoot their color. What I like to do is 600 grit. So I'll wet sand the whole car to 600 grit, and it still leaves enough bite for the top coat to interact with the primer. You can go 800 grit if you want it like a concourse paint job and you just want it glass smooth. A lot of body shops will do 800 grit, but I do 600. I think it leaves a really, really nice finish. It's just that one step above 400. And obviously, if I'm doing all this work, I don't want it to just look okay. I want it to look as good as I can get. So that's going to be next, is putting some primer on here and then doing some block sanding. There's not a whole lot of body work that I'm going to have to do to this. I know it looks like it down here, but like I said, I'm going to have that wide body on here, so I'm not really concerned with the way that this is going to look. I'm probably just going to weld these two panels together inside here, seal them up, put the wide body on, and then seal the actual quarter panel to the wide body underneath here, so that way, you know, water and rock chips and stuff don't get in there. And then that's going to be it for this. So this doesn't have to look beautiful, because it's not going to. I would have to spend hours and hours and hours hammering, dollying, stretching, welding, and then putting the factory seam back in here just to try to fix these. And it's just not, it's not worth it to me. When I already have wide body fenders, I'll just put them back on. So I'll put them on and drill and rivet the wide body fenders on, and then I'll come back through with fiberglass and I'll actually bond them in. Is that super correct? Not really. The correct way for me would be getting a whole new quarter panel, but that's not going to happen. I don't think I'm going to get one for real cheap, and then, like I said, they cut the outer panel and the inner panel, so I'd have to get both of those panels, and that's not going to be cheap at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the fiberglass method. There is a potential for it to crack along the sides, and you know, where it's actually bonded in, for that fiberglass to crack over time or to delaminate, and that's a risk I'm going to have to take, just because I don't want to replace the quarter panels. But I wish I could. They're just too damn expensive, and finding a wrecked Supra, people want an arm and a leg just for everything that's ever touched a Supra anymore, so I don't really want to do that. But it looks like this quarter panel's been replaced just like the other side. I found a seam right here, and I'm thinking that it's been replaced. And just like everything else bodywork wise on this car, I think that the last shop just kind of rushed everything, didn't really do what they were supposed to do, because they just welded it, and then they didn't like seal it at all. So where the majority of the rust is on this hatch is actually where they did their body work. So a lot of the rust is because they did body work, which is not right. You're supposed to do body work because of rust, not rust because of body work. But I'll take a wire wheel up in here to this quarter glass, and that'll get all the sealant off, and then all the paint as well. And that'll be fine for there, because obviously that 7-inch pad isn't going to get up inside there. And then down here, there's some sealant that I got to do too. I just got to remove this, because I don't want to paint this bracket. But yeah, this video is it was a request actually from my buddy Julius in Okinawa. So hope you liked the video, Julius. If you want to see more things tailored to like what you guys are wanting to see, just go ahead and leave it in the comments. If you want to see a specific video on how to do something, I'm all for it. I'll make a video of it, just because I'm not like the world's greatest mechanic. My side job, I'm an aircraft mechanic, but that doesn't mean that I can do absolutely everything on cars. But I'm pretty handy around the garage. So if you guys want to see how to weld an exhaust or something like that, I can do that. If you want to see interior refinishing, I can show you guys how to do that. And it's like redoing a headliner or something like that. But it just lets me know what you guys kind of want to see. So if you want to see, like how I stitch weld, what settings my welder's at, what welder I'm using, all that sort of stuff, just let me know how detailed you want me to go, and I'll be sure to do that for you. But that's going to wrap up this video. I think the quarter panel should be fine sitting like this for a few days. It's not really humid here, so it should be all right. If it isn't, you can just go back through it with some Scotch-Brite, like the green little pot scrubbing Scotch-Brite. You can do that, and it'll get rid of the surface rust that's on here. But I think it should be okay for the next few days, just sitting like this, and then I'll do the roof as soon as I can get the windshield out, and then once the roof is done, I'll probably prime the whole thing, and then I'll do my body filler and all that stuff at that time. You can use body filler as it is right now. Actually, that's the best way to do it. If you're using what's called DTM body filler, and that's direct to metal. So it goes directly to the metal, and you can blend it in and then prime over top of that. But I don't want this thing to flash rust, so I'm gonna prime it and then put my body filler on top of that. So I'll prime it, I'll scuff up the primer, and I might even just take the primer away from that area, do my body work, and then blend it in over top. Because this is just a big area and I don't want it to rust any more than it already is. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. So please like, subscribe. Subscribing really helps, lets me know how I'm doing. The videos are getting some views, quite a bit more than I thought. I was expecting, maybe 100 or so, but I think the first video is close to 400 views now. Nothing too big, but I'm actually impressed. I didn't think that it would hit that. But yeah, so do what you do, like, comment, subscribe, share it into your car groups, all sorts of stuff like that, and leave me some feedback. I tried to put the car under the light so you guys could see better, and I'm actually filming with my iPhone 11 thing with the 3-camera thing on the back. So hopefully the video is a little bit better. But yeah, that's going to be it. We'll see you guys on the next episode.